voting on 7 nominees for our federal district courts, 2 nominees to the Court of International Trade, 1 nominee to the Court of Federal Claims, and 2 U.S. Attorney nominees. The U.S. attorneys include April Perry, nominated to serve as the next U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. Senator Duckworth and I jointly recommended her for the position. She's highly recommended by our screening committee, bipartisan committee. She has significant experience in the private sector and as a federal prosecutor. She would be the first woman to serve as U.S. Attorney in the Northern District of Illinois. I look forward to voting on her today. I do want to bring up an issue which affects all nominees, but particularly U.S. Attorney nominees. It appears that she's going to be blocked by the junior senator from Ohio. He is concerned about the fact that a former president has been indicted and said he wants to, quote, grind the Department of Justice to a halt. Think about what was raised by the minority ranking member yesterday or the day before with the Bureau of Prisons. I want an active investigation and prosecution of any potential connections between Mexican drug cartels and the United States, of course, but specifically in our prison system. That is worrisome, and I'm glad he raised it, and I said yesterday I agree with him. Who would lead that investigation? A U.S. attorney. And if a U.S. attorney and a prosecutor is not in place, but we are dealing with a temporary appointment, it really slows down efforts to stop drug kingpins, violent crime, terrorism, crimes against children. I would urge my colleagues, find another way to protest rather than to stop the Department of Justice from keeping us safe. I hope we can work on that. I heard Leader McConnell on the floor earlier this week asserting that he believes the Republicans are tougher on crime, to be very blunt about it. Now we can see if that will happen when it comes to the appointment of U.S. attorneys. I know members always have conflicts, so in this proceeding we're going to move on the agenda as quickly as we can to bring these issues to a vote. We're still waiting for a few people to arrive, but let me turn it over to Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, the Massachusetts governor is calling out the National Guard because they're being overwhelmed with migrants, illegal immigrants. The solution is to keep them all in Texas and take the pressure off other people. That's not going to work. The solution is to stop the invasion of this country of illegal immigrants by changing policy. I have been very open to comprehensive immigration reform, but it's to the point now where it's incredibly dangerous. ISIS connected smugglers 2 weeks ago are bringing people into our country. That's not a good thing. New York City is begging for relief, and the relief is not going to be stick it to Texas. That's not going to be the relief. So I'm urging this committee to take up, in an emergency fashion, a solution to our border problems before it is too late. As to the markup, Ms. Milichek, I think is her name, from Pennsylvania, I tend to vote almost unanimously for district court judges. I've got my own view of things. I don't expect people to follow my lead, but I'm going to follow my lead. But when I don't vote for a district judge, I think I have a good reason. This is one of the worst picks imaginable. Been overruled constantly based on her decisions as a judge, and set aside the conviction of the president of Penn State, who was integrally involved in the Sandusky debacle in terms of covering up, and her decision was reinstated unanimously by the Court of Appeals. This is not the person should be promoted. So I will vote no, and I will urge anybody who's out there trying to figure out what to do on the floor, look at this case.
Thank you, Senator. And let me add to your statement, the decision by the court in Texas yesterday on the future of DACA, I think also brings a sense of urgency to trying to renew negotiations, at least conversation on immigration. Border security is, of course, a central part of that conversation, but there are other pressing issues that can't be avoided. I hope we can get that started. We had a brief conversation this morning to try to get a bipartisan dialogue underway. So I hope we can move that forward. Anyone else seek recognition at this point?
Mr. Chairman,
I don't see who's calling my name.
Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Blackburn, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you're aware, I have requested a roll call vote on the nomination of April Perry. I did find some things in her work on a case involving the abuse of the justice system disturbing. So according to the Casey-Era Wood standard that you have set for this committee, I am asking for a roll call vote.
That is your right, Senator. The first nominee up is Jerry Edwards, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Louisiana. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on this nominee? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye by
Ms.
proxy.
Klobuchar.
Aye.
Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff.
Aye.
Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
Aye.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, could
Senator
my vote
Whitehouse?
be recorded as present? As me being present, vote aye.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 16, the nays are 5.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. The next nominee is Margaret Garnett, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. Does anyone seek recognition on this nominee? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 12, the nays are 9.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Jennifer Hall, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the District of Delaware. Does anyone seek recognition on this nomination?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Coons.
if I could just speak for one moment, the District Court of Delaware is incredibly busy, and it handles a very large volume of patent cases. Magistrate Judge Hall has a PhD in molecular biophysics and molecular biochemistry, practiced intellectual property law in the private sector, spent years as an assistant U.S. attorney leading the civil division in Delaware, and has served as a magistrate now for 4 years. She's incredibly balanced and qualified, and I would be grateful if my colleagues would consider voting in favor.
Anyone else seek recognition? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff.
Aye.
Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Lee.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tillis.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 16, the nays are 5.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Brandon Long, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Louisiana. Does anyone seek recognition on this nomination? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Sarono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Asa. Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tillis.
Aye by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn. Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 16, the nays are 5.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Matthew Maddox to the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland. Does anyone seek recognition on this nomination? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Sarono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
No by
The
proxy.
same person?
Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 13, the nays are 8.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. The next nominee is Brandy McMillian to the District Court for the Eastern District of Michigan. Does anyone seek recognition on this nomination? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Decision pending
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Sarono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 12, the nays are 9.
Nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Caroline Mahalchik, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. Does anyone seek recognition on this nomination? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Sarono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
No.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Hawley. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Ms. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 11, the nays are 10.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Joseph Lorosky to the U.S. Court of International Trade. Does anyone seek recognition on this nomination? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Sarono. Mr. Booker. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Lee.
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Cruz,
I by proxy.
Mr. Holly. No. Mr. Cotton,
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tillis,
I by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn,
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 18, the nays are 3.
Nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Lisa Wong, also nominated to the U.S. Court of International Trade. Unless someone seeks recognition, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein,
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Aye. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn. No. Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Holly. No. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 12, the nays are 9.
Nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next is Philip Haji, nominated to the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. If no one seeks recognition, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Aye. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next, we have Rebecca Lutzko, nominated to be U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Iowa. I understand we can have a voice vote on this nomination. Does anyone seek recognition to speak?
I'm okay with a voice vote, but I just want to, Senator Lee, Cruz, Blackburn, Hawley have asked to be recorded as no.
Those four will be recorded as no. On the majority member, all those in favor of the nomination say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The majority of the members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Finally, we have April Perry, nominated to be U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. Does anyone seek recognition? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Feinstein.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Ms. Klobuchar. Aye. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
There was a blue slip from Vance.
Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Ossoff. Mr. Welch. Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cornyn.
No.
Mr. Lee.
No by proxy.
Mr. Cruz.
No by proxy.
Mr. Holly. Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Tillis.
No by proxy.
Mrs. Blackburn.
No by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 12, the nays are 9.
The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Is there any further business to come before the committee this morning?
Chairman,
Senator Whitehouse?
the last time we met, I mentioned that the Budget Committee was going to have a hearing on immigration. We had it yesterday. Senator Padilla and I co-chaired it, and it focused on the economic effects of robust immigration. Among the testimony was that a low immigration scenario leads to a $33 trillion U.S. economy in 2050. A high immigration scenario leads to a $47 trillion U.S. economy in 2050, i.e. a $14 trillion swing. Senator Padilla has prompted and was very helpful in the hearing. Senator Graham attended, made very positive comments and remarks. Obviously, the Budget Committee is not the place where this is going to be worked out. This committee is, but I wanted to report to this committee how positive the hearing and the bipartisan nature, including a very helpful witness from the Cato Institute, was in the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. Anyone else
Mr. Chairman.
seeking recognition? Senator Cornyn?
Mr. Chairman, I'm glad that Senator Whitehouse had that hearing, and I have no doubts that legal immigration is a positive thing for our country. Illegal immigration is a disaster. And unfortunately, the policies of this administration have poisoned the well so badly, I am not optimistic that we're going to be able to find consensus because the president, for now going on 3 years, has presided over the worst humanitarian and public safety crisis we've had in our country. And I mentioned previously, it's not just the migrants, it's the fentanyl and the drugs coming across the border, and it's the children who've been lost. Essentially, 300,000 unaccompanied children have been placed with sponsors, and the Biden administration can't tell you where they are or whether they're being trafficked, what their circumstances are. So it's a disaster, and unfortunately, as much as I would love to figure out how to solve this Rubik's Cube, the president has made this immeasurably harder by his failed policies. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I commend to the senator the testimony in the Budget Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. Who's seeking recognition? Senator Kennedy?
Mr. Chairman, I really wanted to ask Senator Cornyn to yield for a question. Would you elaborate any more, a bit more rather, on the inability of the administration to find the children?
I'm sorry, the question is about the children?
Let me get close to the mic. Could you elaborate just a moment
Yeah, I think this
about
is.
the lost children?
Well, thank you for asking. This is, I think, one of the most overlooked aspects of the current Biden border crisis. Since the president became president of the United States, there have been 300,000 unaccompanied children placed with sponsors in the United States. Just to be clear, these don't have to be related to the child, but just willing to accept one of these unaccompanied children. The New York Times did a couple of investigative pieces about how some of these children have been placed in involuntary labor and servitude, very dangerous circumstances for these children, but also that there were 85,000 calls by Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Relocation. Out of the 300,000, 85,000 calls 30 days after they were placed with a sponsor, and there was no answer and no follow-up. So my point is, the Biden administration can't tell you whether these kids are going to school, whether they're getting the health care they need, whether they're being sexually abused, whether they're being neglected. They can't tell you, and they apparently do not care. Because if they did care, they would do something about it. So I appreciate the question. It's so scandalous. I keep asking myself, what's it going to take to get this president's attention? Obviously, the mayor of New York and the governor of Massachusetts and the mayor of Chicago and others who were saying, you know, we can't handle this. I just have never seen such neglect of basic responsibilities on the part of an administration. And Secretary Mayorkas says the border is secure. Well, tell that to the families who lost loved ones to drug overdoses, 108,000 last year alone. Tell them the border's secure. No problem here. Nothing to see. It's outrageous. And I appreciate the question.
Let me say in response to that several things. First, we recall that previous administrations, including the Trump administration, forcibly separated parents from children, and only under a court order from a judge in California set out to find out what happened to those children. That is unacceptable under any president, and I would gladly add my voice to that cause. But we don't believe that these are lost children. The question is whether or not there's been adequate efforts made, or any effort made, to identify who is in charge of their custody at this point. We are involved in an investigation in the committee, and I hope it leads, I think it may lead to a hearing before us here as to the details of these circumstances. I just want to close the conversation on immigration by saying, when the senator from Texas raised this issue a couple days ago in this very room, I said, and Senator Graham said as well, it is time for us to get back to the table and find out if there's any common ground. I hope there is. That common ground would include order in our border. It has to be part of it, but also would include the decision by the Texas court yesterday on DACA and Dreamers, and a number of other areas that are, I think, timely and important for us to consider as quickly as possible. So I accepted the challenge and worked with Senator Graham. We've talked about it since, that this committee, part of our jurisdiction, will pursue this matter. Anyone else seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just respond briefly. The point is that the Biden administration doesn't see it as their responsibility to follow up on the welfare of these children. They're leaving this to the child protective services of the various states. What I don't know about your state, but in my state, child protective services is overwhelmed with what they already have on their plate. And now we've seen 300,000 unaccompanied children now dumped in their lap. And the Biden administration says, it ain't my job, it's theirs. And as I told you before, I'm an optimist, but I'm not going to sit around a table and jawbone this issue anymore. I want to have a vote. I want to have a markup on bills. I want to actually see some concrete action. We've been talking about this for years with no action, and I think this cries out for action and not talk.
Senator, I hope you'll reconsider what you just said. I think that you're a valuable part of this committee on this subject particularly. I hope you'll be at the table as we discuss what we actually vote on in this committee. It's time to do that, and I hope you'll be part of it. And I might say the characterization of the Biden administration is mistaken, but it is true to say that the current system is not adequate and has to be improved. That will be part of our conversation as well. Anything else to come before the committee? If not, the committee stands adjourned.